Undoubtedly, composition is the key ingredient for creating a successful photograph, especially when capturing landscapes. It's one of the few elements entirely within our control. So in today's video, I'll be sharing 5 compositional techniques to consider for every photograph. Hello and welcome to the tranquil waters of Loch Clare here in the northwest Highlands of Scotland. What an absolutely beautiful place this is. Now we're here to capture sunrise this morning, but I also wanted to talk about 5 compositional techniques that I consider on pretty much every landscape photograph that I take. So I think composing a photograph is like playing a bit of a game, isn't it? It's a bit of a puzzle, if you will. Now, I think there's various problems that we've always got to solve in every photo. So where do we actually start when we're faced with something beautiful like we've got here? Well, I guess everybody has got their own thought process, and I'm not saying mine is the only way or the right way, but I've got 5 considerations that I always run through on every photograph. So let's get into the first tip. So my first consideration is one that I think often gets overlooked, but it's crucial in my opinion. Now, when I arrive at a scene I believe is worthy of a photograph like this one, I simply just take a moment. I leave the camera in the bag, I observe the scene, breathe in the air, soak in the atmosphere and just enjoy the moment for a couple of minutes. Quite often a photo will present itself to me rather than me having to hunt around for it. I tend to ask myself a few questions during this time as well, like how does the place make me feel? Is there a story within the landscape? Is there a mood present? These feelings can sometimes influence how I compose a scene and can be essential to driving a narrative within the frame. Now, of course, we don't always have time for this, do we? Especially when there's, say, an amazing rainbow or the sun's just like lighting the landscape up. So I think we need to remain reactive. However, if we can just take a few minutes, I think it really helps. So I've got my composition framed up here for my sunrise photograph. It's about on sunrise right now. We're getting a bit of detail in the sky, which is really nice. Now, I've been really careful here because the loch is so calm. I'm really going for the reflection of the mountain, and I've tried to be very, very mindful of where that reflection sits in the scene, because we've got this little break between these 2 little islands here. I'm trying to position the reflection right in the middle of that. So obviously the height of our camera means the reflection either gets larger or smaller within the frame. So I've just been very mindful about the height of my position and also where I am left and right as well. Very subtle movements make a big difference to this shot. So I've just really got a little bit of a gap around the reflection around these islands, which I think works well. There's a bit of snow on top of the mountain as well, and we've got a grouping of Scots pines on the left hand side, and we're really looking straight down the valley here. And I think the leading line of the reflection as well drives the eye down towards the dip in the valley there, where the scene is a little bit brighter. It's just a case of waiting now. So tip number 2 is to identify a subject. From my perspective, most of my photos I take have a clear subject and everything else kind of supports that subject, if you like. So supporting the subject can take on sort of various forms. It could be negative space, allowing a single subject to breathe, or it might involve, say, a path or a road leading to the main point of interest. I think there are numerous ways in which another element within a photo can support the main subject. However, if we can identify one key element within our frame that truly stands out, we've got a starting point around which we can build the rest of the image. I think without identifying this key element, I found it really challenging to start unpacking the rest of the scene. So yeah, finding that subject is key. And today we've got that big mountain, which is our key subject. So composition technique number 3 I consider on every photo is depth. And I consistently consider depth in each photo I take, because without it the image may lack the 3-dimensional feel that I seek in my compositions. I think introducing depth to an image is not straightforward though, but it serves as an effective way to give a 2-dimensional photo a more three-dimensional quality. Now, there are numerous methods that can be employed to convey depth in a photo, and one standout approach for me is through atmosphere. And I think it's a factor that we've got significant control over. Now, I mention this because we can not only look for atmosphere within the landscape, but also add it in post-production too. So fog and mist, for example, are excellent for introducing separation and depth. As we peer further into the scene, details soften, and our brains instinctively perceive those softer elements to be farther away. And this same technique can be applied to a wide shot or a vista. If we consider that the objects closer to the camera will likely have more contrast than those farther away, a touch of haze or softening in the background, softening those background details in post-production, will lead our brains to register that those softer details are actually further away. And it can be a really remarkably powerful tool to add depth and a three-dimensional feel to your photographs. So yeah, contrast in the foreground and let that contrast fall away as we recede into the image. Please allow me to mention my landscape photography ebook, all about how I compose my photos. The PDF book has over 120 pages and 200 photos that show my thought process from finding a composition to finally pressing the shutter button. I'm sure you'll find it a great read, and it is the best way to help support my channel. If you do fancy checking it out, there is a link down there in the video description. The sun is fully up now, and I've turned my attention to this grouping of Caledonian pines on the left hand side, which was kind of just encroaching into the frame in the wider shot. Now I'm going a bit more intimate with this scene here, picking out some nice details. Got some amazing light hitting the side of the mountain, and it's quite diffused. There's a bit of cloud out that way as well, so it's not too harsh just yet, but I'm making the most of it while I can, just picking out different detailed shots, trying to incorporate some reed beds, then going a bit tighter in, and just playing around with different compositions pretty much from the same spot. Let's move on to tip number 4, which I refer to as dark to light, and it involves understanding the visual impact of the brightness within the photo. So typically the eye is drawn to the brightest part of an image. Therefore, strategically positioning this bright area within the frame can effectively guide the viewer's attention to what's most important in the photo. For instance, if the brightest part is in the foreground, the viewer might miss exploring the top part of the frame, which could be suboptimal if the main element of the shot is situated up there. So consider a horizontal image framed using the rule of thirds. Ideally, I aim for the brightest part of the photo to align with one of those intersecting lines, which offers balance and harmony in the composition. Now, if this doesn't happen naturally, post-production techniques like dodging and burning can be used to manipulate and shape that light to enhance the composition, because we don't always get light exactly where we want it to be when we're out in the field, but just using those little dodging and burning techniques can really help guide the viewer into the image to where we want them to look. So, tip number 5 involves eliminating distractions from the scene and being mindful of elements that may obstruct or, say, hinder the flow and separation within the image. So once I've identified the main subject, I always consider what can be removed from the composition. Are there any, distracting elements that we could do without? Now, while tools like the spot removal tool in post-production can really help, I strive to try to handle these issues in the field wherever possible. So if there's something distracting, I explore whether I can eliminate it by positioning the camera, maybe higher, lower, or changing the focal length or sometimes both. I always pay special attention to the edges of the frame because elements lingering on the periphery, neither fully in nor out of the shot, can be surprisingly distracting. So addressing these considerations during the initial capture ensures a cleaner and more focused composition, and actually saves quite a bit of time in post-production too. If you enjoy the art of composing your photos, I'm sure you'll enjoy this video too. And why not check out my landscape photography ebook, where I delve into this topic in great depth. The link for that is up here and also down in the video description. Thanks so much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again next week, where we'll be out shooting landscapes once again.